What is going on out there? All of my fellow conservatives, Brandon Lewis here, coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere in the Chattanooga area. Glad to be here with you. I'm going to bring you the biggest news stories all across the three grand divisions of Tennessee, and there are some big ones. So I'm glad to be here with you. If you'll look in the comments section as I go through this, you can see that Jason will be posting these articles and also perhaps a few calls to action. And so make sure that you can get to those and put those puppies in there. All right. And do put in the comment section if you can hear me. If you can hear me loud and clear, and if this thing's coming on, I've got a little bit of a microphone attached to this. So if you can hear the broadcast, if you would put it in the comment section, that would be great. And also let me know who you are, where you are watching from. We've got some big stories to cover here. So let's get right into it. Thank you. Loud and clear. That must be from Jason. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is take action this week. We have a social media common carrier bill that is one step closer to becoming law, and Jason is going to post the committee members in there and the fact that you need to contact them. And so I'm going to start off with that because this is the biggest thing, but then I want to make a little bit of commentary about what's going on with illegal immigration in our state and what we should really think about that as primary voting Republicans and conservatives. So here we go. First up. The common carrier bill that would stop social media censorship of Tennessee elections and citizens has passed the full House Commerce Committee and will now be heard in the House Finance Ways and Means Committee on Wednesday, March 30th. That's next week, guys. So I'm really going to need your help to make sure that we contact these folks. The A's prevailed in a voice vote with 2 Republican committee members voting no. We have no shortage of rhinos. No shortage of rhinos, and I hope that people pick up papers in the Republican primary against these folks. And here are the rhinoceroses. If you want to identify them when you see them out and about, ask them why they vote this way. Representative Patsy Hazlewood and Representative Eddie Manis, who could not even be qualified as a Republican to run, but rather had to be vouched for. They're just Democrats. And they voted with the Democrats on this. Powell and Thompson, sponsor of the bill, Representative Dennis Powers, said that the legislation would simply bring social media companies under the existing common carrier law so that Tennesseans and the public in large will not be discriminated against. Hey guys, thanks for joining me here. We've got a few more folks coming on. Do post in the comment section from whence you are watching. Let me know what you think about these stories as we go. And moving right along with this story, before the vote was taken, Powers stated, "We wish the federal government would have dealt with this years ago. I wish Trump and the Republicans would have dealt with it. But as we know, when Republicans get in power up in Washington, they don't do much. They bicker and they squabble. Hey, Steve, watching from Spring Hill, Tennessee. Thanks, buddy. They bicker and they squabble and they squander opportunities when they are in power, just like our Republicans do up in Nashville. So we wish the federal government would have dealt with this years ago," Dennis Powers said, "and they should have. But because they have not, it's gone back to the states. The states created the federal government, so we really have the obligation. If the federal government is not going to do their job, we need to step in. And it is going to be a model legislation for the nation. The common carrier law is one that we feel has constitutional muster, and it's the one that Associate U.S. Supreme Court Clarence Thomas said would work. So this is the approach that we're going to be taking. All right, guys. So that's the social media common carrier law. Is it perfect? In an ideal world, neither the government nor big tech would be able to censor your speech. But we are not in an ideal world. We are in the practical political world in which we live, where we have to get things done. And the libertarian argument on this has always been, if you want there to be free speech online, then you should start your own social media platform, which they did with Parler. And then Amazon immediately shut down their servers, okay, because it had gained some momentum. Then Apple said you can't download it anymore. Then Google Play said you can't download it anymore. So big tech and their lobbyists are up in Nashville right now pouring money into these rhinos campaigns that'll take it. They are influencing them, constantly saying that it's going to lose, that it's just like the other bills, and it's not. And they're up there. And buddy, the lobbyists have more power and they have more influence up there, especially the taxpayer-funded lobbyists, the ones that you pay for, than citizens do in Nashville. That's what I'm discovering. Running this publication has not been very much fun. It's been expensive and it has been demoralizing because all I ever really get to do is tell you is just to have this this reinforcement of the fact that liberty and freedom and true conservatism is not really alive and well up there, but rather it's a bunch of taxpayer-funded lobbyists, a bunch of left-leaning corporate interests, and a bunch of rhinos. And Brian Benton mentions get on Gab. I think we're on Gab. To my knowledge, Jason can chime in here, but guess where all the conservatives in Tennessee are not? On Gab. There's not enough of them. So we have to play where we can be politically influential, and this is one of those places. And so right now, you have the interest of Tennesseans, Republicans, conservatives, and conservative thought up against big tech, up against left-leaning corporations up there, and they are constantly in the offices. And I believe, Brian, that Jason just posted in the link there to click on that Gab profile if you want to do that. Catherine Kegel Harmon says, get them out of Tennessee. Sonia says, Sevierville, Tennessee needs help. The school boards all just voted yes for SEL, aka CRT. You got to get these folks out in the primaries. And I'm actually interviewing a guy that's running in the Republican primary against another Republican, and I think we need that. I think that Republicans should be able to stand on the record and win elections. Here's another thing I want to talk about before we get into the next story, and that's illegal immigration. So we have had just about every good bill that would do anything to stop illegal immigration in our state has been killed by rhinos in Nashville this year. We had a bill that would have stopped taxpayers from funding the education of illegal immigrants, compulsory, and we had 2 Republicans vote against it, and it died, didn't make it out of the educational committee. We had legislation to transport them to other parts of the country. That got killed by rhinos. We had legislation that would have, what else? Jason can put that in here. We had legislation on illegal immigration that would allow for prosecuting people that facilitate the transportation of those individuals. That's actually still alive, though it may be killed very quickly. We had an E-Verify bill that had the opportunity to make it compulsory for employment in Tennessee, to go through the E-Verify system, and that there would be financial penalties if you disregarded that. That was killed. So let me ask you a question. And this is a good question. You can pose this to any Republican legislator that you talk to. You could pose it to the governor who promised that he would fight against illegal immigration. You could ask it to Cameron Sexton. You could ask it to Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. If Republican leadership will not do anything significant to curtail illegal immigration, when we have the greatest illegal immigration crisis in our nation and in our state, if they won't do jack doodly you know what, then they need to just quit lying on the campaign trail. I don't think that the Republicans, if you're running for Senate or House, if you're not one of the handful like Bruce Griffey or Dennis Powers or Mark Pody or Janice Bowling or Terry Lynn Weaver, or a handful of them that are really conservative on this issue, the word illegal immigration should never come out of your mouth on the campaign trail, and you should just tell people the truth, and that is, I'm a corporate shill, and I get lots of PAC money, and we ain't doing jack squat about this, and we don't care if it drives down wages. We don't care if it hurts our culture. We don't care if there are safety concerns. We don't care if your kids can't get educated because they're in a room with a whole bunch of other kids who can't speak English and who have no previous education, even though our education system already can't teach kids to read and write. This is the gospel truth about what's going on with illegal immigration in the state of Tennessee. We got one bill that might help stop the facilitation of transporting illegal aliens. I don't even think that thing's going to pass. I'll just be honest with you. I don't think we've got a shot. I think the only shot we have to do anything about illegal immigration in the state of Tennessee is to primary as many of these rhinos on these committees that continue to kill the legislation. I'm at a loss. So please share this everywhere you can. Share the podcast, share this video. If you know people that are concerned about this issue, it is terrible. That's all I got. That's a rosy red little report. Let's move on to the next story. Parents' Bill of Rights blocked by House Health Subcommittee. After being rolled multiple times without action by the House Health Subcommittee, the Parents' Bill of Rights was dealt the killing blow during their March 22nd meeting by failing to receive a second. As per procedure, Chairman of the Health Subcommittee, Bob Ramsey, called for a motion and a second. The bill received a proper motion, but no subcommittee member spoke up to offer a second. Ramsey announced the bill died due to a lack of a second. House Bill 2451, sponsored by Representative Weaver, would have required local education agency to permit parents to have access to certain information, including the names of instructors, titles available in school libraries, teacher manuals, and curriculum. It would have required that parents provide written consent before a student could participate in any extracurricular activities, family lessons, field trips, school assembly, or guest speaker, and it would have prohibited certain healthcare practitioners from providing medical treatment to a minor without parental consent or appropriate court order. Representative Weaver told us, "I find it appalling that a bill brought to me by a parent, not a lobbyist, which is the biggest issue, was never even heard by the committee. Thus, the parents across the state were silenced. However, the lobbyist voices rang out loud and clear, parents' rights, what's next? From the words of the great late Tom Petty, I won't back down." The lobbyists up there. Lobbyists are a big, huge issue in Tennessee. Guavin Markland says, Mark Pody is awesome, and I agree. Kathy Kegel says, we're not buying their lies. Do your research, all on the candidates, especially your local and state election. Here's another story related to this. Lobbying transparency bill dies due to lack of a subcommittee support. I want you to listen to this bill, listen to the fact that it's dead, and then think about what it says about the Republicans on this committee. On March 18th, the Tennessee Lobbyist Association sent an email to all their members urging their action to lobby against the Transparency for Taxpayer-Funded Lobbying legislation currently being considered in the Tennessee General Assembly. The legislation that the TLA hoped to block was House Bill 2485, sponsored by Representative Todd Warner, and Senate Bill 2687, sponsored by Senator Mark Pody. As introduced, the act would require employers of lobbyists to include with their employer disclosure report to the Ethics Commission the aggregate total amount of your damn taxpayers' dollars that was being funded in part or whole, including expenses for lobbying, consulting, advocating, and third-party associations utilized by the employer for such services. So basically, all they were asking is, hey, if you're going to take taxpayer dollars to lobby against their best interest, which is primarily what the MFers do up there, then you should have to report how much money you're spending on the lobbyists. Seems really reasonable. Not to rhinos. Apparently, the lobbyist effort paid off, as Representative Warner contacting us to explain that he, had taken it off notice from the House Public Service Committee, and Chair Esther Heldon told him the bill would not pass or have a motion or a second in the committee meeting. Warner said, with the Republican majority up here, it's very sad to see a lack of support for true conservative legislation from my peers. And this is what we basically have. We have a handful of true Republicans, and we have a whole bunch of Democrats that run on the Republican side because that's how their districts are drawn. All it is wanting to know how much money is being spent on taxpayer lobbying. Amazing. I don't even have to make this stuff up. I don't even have to gild the lily. These people make it, they just make it transparent. And here's the thing. If you've listened this far, you're one of the true blue Republicans that care about what's going on in our state. So let me tell you, we are the only organization in the state of Tennessee that's doing this kind of reporting so that you actually know who's conservative and who isn't. So if you would go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support, this has been the hardest damn thing I've ever had to raise money for. I've raised money for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, Baylor School, state and local candidates, federal candidates, my fraternity, church, you name it. this thing has been the hardest to get support for because there's no money in keeping people free. And there's a lot of money in taking people's rights away. So if you go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support, if you give $50 or more or a $10 plus recurring donation, we will send you this Don't California My Tennessee tumbler. If you put the convictions and the courage of the majority of these people on these committees up in Nashville in here, which would amount to about this much conviction and courage only when it's politically expedient. And if you put it in here and you shook it up, it would swell all the way to the brim and perhaps even overflow out of this because it has magical properties. We'll also send you a Don't California My Tennessee bumper sticker along with a Proud Tennessee Conservative bumper sticker, and you will get my heartfelt appreciation plus this directory of your state and local, your state elected representatives in the House and the Senate. And I hope that that thing changes. I hope that that thing really changes a lot between now and the election, because we need some conservative legislators up there to quit lying on the campaign trail and to start doing things in committee. So please do go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support and hit that support button. You'd be one of about 3 people to do it. Moving right along. Legislation to safeguard religious services during a time of crisis passes the Tennessee legislature. And this is one I've got mixed feelings about. Number one, I hate that it's even necessary. Number two, the only reason it probably got any votes is because there's not anybody lobbying against it up in Nashville. And probably the only reason it got any votes is because it's almost like political pandering. The sad fact is that it is necessary. Even our own governor, during the pandemic, called anyone who wanted to attend church services selfish. And he didn't stand up for anybody. Instead, he opposed our individual freedoms and rights throughout the pandemic. And so the fact that we even have to do this is amazing, in my opinion. So, Tennessee legislation that was first filed in February of 2021, back when we needed it, has passed the General Assembly with overwhelming votes in favor because now it doesn't make a damn difference. Senator Janice Bowling, thank God for her, amended Bill SB 1197 during the Senate hearing on March 24, 2022. This bill prohibits a public official from limiting the lawful operation of a church or religious organization, including religious services, during a time of emergency or major disaster. Bowling said it simply codifies our First Amendment and religious rights. Prior to taking the vote, Republican Senators Becky Massey, Mike Bell, Kerry Howards, Joey Hensley, and Ken Yeager spoke in favor of the bill. About time. Bill said, let's err on the side of liberty and conscience. Where were these people? Where were these people years ago when we were going through all this? Let's err on the side of freedom. Let's err on the side of protecting worship. Roberts said to me, this bill does something that we ought to have discussed, and that is we're giving the right of a church to remain open during a time of crisis when people need the encouragement more than any other time in their lives. Hensley said this is a fundamental right that we should protect, should have protected before. That's my words, not his. Freedom of religion and worship is one of the most freedoms we need to protect. At all costs, government should not be shutting down churches, yet they did, and nobody did anything about it. Next one. A final vote was taken. It passed 25 yeses and 4 no votes, with all Republicans present voting in favor. It's always easy to vote yes when there's no money on the line, isn't it? On the House side, HB 1137 was sponsored by Representative Rusty Grills. The bill passed out of the House of Representatives last year on April 12th with 70 yeses and 8 noes, one person not voting, with all Republicans voting present in favor. Grills said, I just don't believe the governor, by the stroke of the pen, should be able to stop religious gatherings, and I think that's important because it has eternal value. We need to make sure that our churches have the doors open and ready to allow congregants to meet. I'm glad they did it. I applaud them for doing it. But I sure wish they would have done it when Lee and all these petty little city mayors and all these petty county mayors, like the one that I lived in here, Jim Coppinger, terrible rhino, awful legacy, would have done something about this stuff. The things that really matter that we need now, the Republicans won't do anything about, but the things that don't matter that are symbolic, they'll hop on and brag about. I'm just tired of it. And it has been very frustrating reporting on this legislative session this year. I thought it would be much better than this. It's turned out to be pretty rough. Next story. Some Senate Republicans do not support legislation to ban abortions in Tennessee. Representative Rebecca Alexander is sponsoring House Bill 2779 that will ban all abortions except those that would prevent the death or substantial irreversible impairment of a bodily function of the mother. Alexander says the bill was modeled after similar legislation that was passed in Texas. The passing of that legislation resulted in around a 60% decrease in the numbers of abortions performed in the state. The bill would allow any individual to sue those who help women obtain abortions. This not only includes physicians who perform abortions, it also includes those who aid and abet abortions by paying for the reimbursement for somebody else to pay for an abortion. If it passes, individuals could be sued for up to $10,000. Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, who presides over the Senate, states that he will not offer his support for the legislation, citing a presumed conflict with the state's heart bill abortion law that is currently the subject of a case in federal court. Randy McNally is old. He is not with it. And I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory personal way, but people ask him questions out in public, the few times he goes out and takes questions in public. And he can't tell people about very basic fundamental things without staff around, things that I know. And I'm not saying that there are so many people in Tennessee that know so much more than I do, because I can only keep up with this half the time because I run another business. He's not with it. But the most important thing is he doesn't have conservative moorings or convictions. He had to be dragged, kicking and screaming, to allow people to have a few of their medical freedoms back. We still have rhinos like Patsy Hazlewood killing bills like that say you shouldn't have to have a vaccine passport to listen to music in a taxpayer-funded public facility. That's what we got up there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just telling you. You can look at all the pretty Facebook posts and Instagram posts and everything that these legislators are all putting up, standing in front of this and that, usually organizations that give them PAC money, usually. And you can see them posting all this stuff online, and you think, man, we got some conservative legislators in Tennessee. Buddy, when push comes to shove, we don't. Pictures are easy. Policy is hard. I'm not going to read the rest of this crap. You know what, I will. McNally states that he has spoken with Senator Mark Pody, sponsor of the Senate version of the bill, about his concerns, stating that he hopes the legislation does not advance in the Senate. Doesn't surprise me. And here's a big disappointment to me personally. Senator Ken Yeager stated that individuals with a cause of action allowing them to pursue civil penalties for procedures unrelated to them personally would capsize the current tort of law. Ken Yeager's a rhino. And the saddest thing about this is that I helped get him elected. You just never know how people are going to do until they get up there. I hope somebody runs against him in the primary. He's a government animal. That's what he cares about. Makes his money from the government, loves being in government, cares more about government employees, cares more about government lobbyists than he cares about his own constituents. That's my take on it. Next story. Senator Janice Bowling speaks on the 10th Amendment and states' rights. Senator Janice Bowling spoke about the 10th Amendment and states' rights during a committee meeting March 16th while presenting a bill to end Tennessee's practical participation with federal actions that find them constitutionally violative, which means it violates it. Bowling said, "Today we face a federal government that has taken literally hundreds of thousands of steps beyond the boundaries drawn by the Constitution." Bowling quoted Thomas Jefferson, who wrote, "All powers that are not specifically granted to the federal government be reserved to the states." She also reminded her colleagues that Jefferson said to take a single step beyond the boundaries thus specified drawn around these powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power. And so Bowling also noted that state and local government can refuse to carry out federal directives for any reason. No determination of constitutionality is necessary, she said. The state has the right to direct its resources wherever it sees fit. And I hope that she's got a bill that deals with the nullification process in Tennessee. And this is something we should have done a long time ago. As people were being denied their medical freedoms in our state, instead of our legislators asserting states' rights, well, the federal government said this. Well, the federal government won't give us this money. Well, the federal government won't pay this. I mean, money is not principle. Money is not principle. But apparently a lot of Republicans think it is. Survey shows an all-time low consumer outlook in Tennessee. A new survey shows that Tennessee consumers have much lower economic outlook than usual, dropping considerably since the last survey in December. According to the Tennessee Consumer Outlook Index, that's a survey conducted by Middle Tennessee State University College of Business. This decline seems to come from concerns over inflation, rising gas prices, the war in Ukraine, and a lack of satisfaction with the performance of President Joe Biden. Usually Tennesseans measure much more positive outlook than the rest of the country. The current survey, completed earlier this month, resulted in a score of negative 198. The previous all-time low was registered at 106 in September of 2021. And the December 2021 survey, the director of MTSU's Office of Consumer Research explained that the Consumer Outlook survey does not represent what's currently going on today, but rather what people think when they look into the future. So I'm going to close with a little personal commentary. I hope you don't mind me doing this. A few things. Had a good weekend. My daughter had a 10-year-old birthday party at our house with family. Last night we had a little get-together, grilled out some steaks, had one of her best friend come over from across the street. So we had a good little dinner. We're going to do an ice cream bar tonight. Continue to celebrate the birthday week. It was lots of fun. We went to the Lost Sea yesterday, which I would strongly recommend as a tourist attraction if you have not been to the Lost Sea. It is a fantastic little venue there in Sweetwater. This weekend, my plan is to go out to the new property. It is just about the size to build a walking trail, like a quarter-mile walking trail. So I'm going to go out with a friend of mine, Eric, and we are going to mark where that puppy's going to go. Got to meet the landscaper. It is a mud hole out there. Try to get that thing shored up. And, I want to talk a little bit about our culture. We have Supreme Court justices that cannot say what a woman is. And I don't know what's going on with the corruption of our culture. I believe it's spiritual. Leftism gets a hold of really good things and it kills it, corrupts it, makes it bad. I'm not saying that public education was ever fantastic, even when I was in school, because I think when you don't pay your money directly, and when you don't have to put your own skin in the game and write a check, and when you are not really a consumer, you're just a number, naturally, from an economic standpoint, that's going to produce a bad result from an education standpoint. And government cannot do simple things well. They certainly can't do complex things well, like educating students. We know this. I mean, we've been trying this for 40, 50 years. Every year, the money goes up, the quality goes down, and the satisfaction of the parents and the students goes down. It's just a fact of the matter. I'll tell you something else that corrupts. Science fiction. So, one of my earliest memories is watching Star Trek. My parents divorced when I was 1, something like that. And I barely remember, not 1, I don't know, maybe it was 2 or 3, I can't even recall when it happened. But I can barely remember living in their home. I moved into a little mobile home, single-wide mobile home, when I lived with my mother, and I lived with her until I was 13. But one of my earliest memories is laying on some shag green carpet and watching Star Trek, the original. And I just thought it was great. And so I watched The Next Generation when I was in high school. But they came out with one about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was just terrible. It was just chocked full of as much political nonsense as you could possibly watch. I got about halfway through it, and I was like, I can't watch this, and I just quit watching it. And then Picard came out, and it's pretty much been devoid of all that nonsense until the most recent episode, where they arrive on Earth in the year 2024. And of course, climate change has killed us all, or is about to kill us all, and the planet's on life support. They had to throw in, like, the homosexual agenda. That's got to be in every episode. They had to throw in the nobility of allowing people to just sprawl all over. Vagrants and bums. I mean, trespassers. Like we've done this thing where we think that we're going to somehow end people's willingness to work by feeding them endlessly and allowing them to sleep wherever they want to and providing them all kinds of services. That just doesn't work. We've seen it not work. So I'm watching this, what is normally a really good show about shooting up things and jumping all over the place and, slingshotting around a planet in 15 minutes to go try and travel. And it's like they always dump this crap in the middle of good programming. The only thing that I really did like about The Mandalorian, of course, they had to can one of their characters. Fired them from the show because she expressed some conservative views. The only thing that I really liked about Disney's Mandalorian was the fact that they took all that political stuff out of it. It was just a spaghetti western in space. And so it saddens me as I watch my child's programming on TV, try to watch a TV show that has been produced in the last 10 years. The fact that the left and Hollywood and big tech is just absolutely dead set on eliminating American exceptionalism, Judeo-Christian values, anything that would actually help us get out of the mess that we're in. Because God has a little instruction manual called the Bible, and when you don't live by it, things go wrong. How do I know this? Because I often avoid taking up its advice in my own life. And I make mistakes all the time. I am no choir boy. And every time I deviate from the set of instructions, God spanks your bottom. He might not do it right away, but he'll do it eventually. And it breaks my heart to watch so many good things get so corrupted. From our education system in Tennessee, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, these little kids that they're failing by not teaching them how to read and write, sent them out in school functionally illiterate, failing to protect our culture on illegal immigration, and a lot of it's just PAC money up in Nashville. It's amazing. Start small. So guys, I'm doing my little part here, running this little conservative news organization with our skeleton crew. Please do forward this video to anybody you know. Send them the podcast. Everybody knows some conservative that doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to what's going on in Tennessee. They don't know what's going on up in Nashville. They don't know about their state reps and how they vote. That's one reason we end up with rhinos year after year. So if you could please let the conservatives that you know that are actually conservative know about our news publication. Ask them to subscribe so they at least, maybe if they check an email once a week, they might kind of sort of know something that's going on. Their heart's in the right place, their brain just isn't. They just don't know. It's very expensive for us to get subscribers. And we don't keep all of them because a lot of folks are country club Republicans. Like, they don't care about critical race theory in the school. They don't care about the sexualization of children. They don't care about illegal immigration as long as the taxes are low. And the economic climate's decent. They don't care about all the corruption that comes from corporations that hate our way of life coming into Tennessee and getting billions of dollars to do it. I'll close with this thought. Every Republican campaigns on illegal immigration. We are having the biggest crisis in illegal immigration in our state's history. And for the most part, nothing was done about it this year. But when Ford Motor Company wants to move into our state, very left-leaning company, and they want to push a green agenda down our throat by building electric cars, we'll have a special session and give them $1 billion of your tax dollars. That is a huge contrast in what their priorities are, spoken versus lived. All right, guys, that's all I got. I've gone long. I hope y'all have a fantastic, wonderful weekend. Love you, mean it. Take care. I'll talk to you next week. And keep your eyes in the inbox for Brandon's brain. If I can get around to writing it today, I hope I can. Take care, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. Hope you enjoy it. See you next week.